This happened a few months ago. I was a new history teacher, just trying to find my footing at a small-town high school. At first, the building seemed charming, with its old feel and fading murals. But then, things started to get weird, and I've been wondering what really happened. On my third day, I walked into my classroom and noticed an old janitor's cart. It wasn't there the day before. I thought I must have just forgotten, but the rust and the faded name tag that read Mr. Hargrove made me uneasy. Who was he? Why was that cart here? My heart raced a little, but I brushed it off. Later that day, during lunch, I heard this faint bell ringing. Everyone else chatted and ate, but I felt out of place. I checked the clock on the wall. It always seemed slow, like time was struggling to move forward. I thought, it's just an old clock. But still, a shiver ran through me as I noticed how the hallways felt more cramped, more suffocating. As the weeks rolled on, things got stranger. One day, a student named Sarah came to me, her face pale. She said she heard whispers from the empty auditorium. I thought she was imagining things, but she seemed so sincere. The idea of those vacant seats staring back at us made my skin crawl. I assured her everything was fine, but each time the bell rang, a chill shot through me. Then there were the notes. I started finding these small, ripped pieces of paper on my desk. Each note had messy, childish handwriting. "Help me," one said. Another read, "Don't go." At first I thought it was just a prank by some middle schoolers, but when the notes kept appearing day after day, I felt scared and frustrated. I asked the kids about it, but they looked at me like I should already know. One afternoon, I gathered some of them to talk about the school's history. They seemed nervous and distracted, sharing dark stories about past students. Their eyes darted around the room as if waiting for something to happen. I tried to shake the feeling of dread swallowing me. Maybe I was just overthinking it, but every time that phantom bell rang, I felt weighty anxiety settle in my stomach. One evening, I stayed late after school. The classroom was quiet, and I decided to check the auditorium. As I approached the entrance, my heart pounded in my chest. The air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. I stood there, teetering on the brink of stepping inside, but I hesitated. Instead, I turned on my heel and left. That night I wondered if it was all in my head, but the more I thought about it, the less I was sure. I felt eyes watching me even when I was home alone. As I lay in bed, I closed my eyes, hoping to forget it all. But then, in the darkness, I swore I heard it again. A soft whisper. It called my name from somewhere deep in those empty hallways. The next day, I was desperately trying to focus. I planned my lessons, reviewed student assignments, and thought about tomorrow's quiz. But I couldn't shake the eerie feelings from the night before. Every corner of the school seemed to hold secrets, and the whispers haunted my thoughts. During lunch, I phoned my old college friend, hoping to vent about the odd happenings. As I spoke, I heard the bell ring. Everyone around me continued as if nothing was wrong. I hung up, feeling the weight of isolation. I couldn't tell if I was just paranoid or if there was something deeply unsettling occurring. After lunch, I returned to my classroom and found another note. It was on my desk, just like the others. But this one was different. It had a crude sketch of the auditorium, the curtains drawn, and a dark figure standing at the edge of the stage. I froze. My head swam with questions. Who was drawing these? Why was it so frightening? I took a deep breath and decided to confront the students about it, hoping for some clarity. I gathered a small group, including Sarah. "Do you all know who's been leaving these notes?" I asked, holding the drawing up for them to see. The room grew silent. They exchanged nervous glances. Sarah finally spoke up. It's about the show." I furrowed my brow, confused. "What show?" I pressed. "The one they cancelled." A boy named Mark chimed in, his voice trembling. "Years ago, something bad happened in the auditorium." "What do you mean?" I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. They whispered among themselves, uncomfortable. Then Sarah broke the silence again. There was a performance, a girl. She didn't make it. Her eyes filled with fear. Everyone says the auditorium is haunted. I was stunned into silence. The pieces of the puzzle started to fit together, but the image was terrifying. I felt the urge to flee the classroom, but that wouldn't help. I had to know more. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, frustration escaping my lips. "What happened? Who was she?" "People talk about it like it's a ghost story," Mark replied softly. "But it feels real. I see things sometimes, shadows near the stage." "Same here," Sarah added, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced as mixed emotions washed over me. Fear and curiosity warred within me. I thought about checking the auditorium again, but a heavy doubt seeped in. What if there was more to uncover? That evening I decided to return. I felt like I had a duty to find out the truth. The hallway felt darker as I made my way toward the auditorium, the air thickening around me. With each step, the whispers echoed in my mind, urging me forward. As I approached the entrance, my dread grew. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement just inside the shadows, as if someone or something was waiting for me. My breath hitched, and I hesitated, the weight of my decision pulling me back. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me whole. The air turned cold, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I blinked, trying to regain my bearings, but nothing changed. My surroundings were enveloped in an unnatural blackness. After what felt like an eternity, a sliver of light appeared, barely visible. I stepped toward it, heart pounding. Instinct pushed me forward, a mixture of fear and determination propelling me along. As I approached the light, I realized I was back at the entrance of the auditorium, but now the door stood ajar. I hesitated, my instincts warning me against it. But my curiosity outweighed my fear. I pushed the door open slowly. The faint sound of rustling filled the air, along with a chilling silence that pressed down on me like a weight. The auditorium lay before me, dimly lit, the stage casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the dark. I took a cautious step inside, every creak of the floorboards echoing back at me. My throat felt dry, and I fought the urge to turn back. "Hello?" I called out, my voice faltering and swallowed by the expansive room. The silence returned, heavy and filled with the unknown. I stepped closer to the stage, drawn in by an inexplicable force. That's when I saw it, a piece of fabric sticking out from behind the curtains. My heart raced as adrenaline surged through my veins. I instinctively walked toward it, the urge to discover what lay beneath that curtain growing stronger. I pulled back the heavy fabric. There, laying on the stage, was a faded costume. It was crumpled but recognizable, a dress. My mind raced back to Mark's words about the girl who didn't make it. What connected her to this dress? Was it the same one she wore? The moment I touched the fabric, the air shifted. I heard a whisper. It was soft at first, then grew louder, reverberating in my mind. "Help me." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. A chill ran through the room. I felt like I was not alone. Shadows began to move, not just from my imagination, but across the walls, twisting and forming into shapes. I couldn't distinguish one from another, but the feeling of being watched was undeniable. Panic surged, and I turned to flee. But before I could reach the door, it slammed shut. My heart raced as I pounded on the wood, desperation spiraling in. It was happening. All the stories, all the murmurs about the haunted auditorium, they were real. I backed away, searching for another way out. Fear howled in my chest. As I turned, a figure emerged from the shadows near the stage. A girl draped in the tattered costume, her eyes piercing through the darkness. I squinted in disbelief. I found out who she was, but that just made it worse. The girl stepped into the dim light, her face a haunting blend of sorrow and anger. I felt the blood drain from my face as I took in her appearance. Her hair hung in tangled strands, and the dress seemed almost alive, shifting as if caught in a breeze that never existed. "You," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed through the whispers of the auditorium. I stumbled back, the dress gliding under my fingertips still fresh in my mind. I wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. "What do you want?" I managed, my voice trembling, fighting to stay steady in the face of the inexplicable. "You shouldn't be here," she replied, her eyes narrowing. "They will come for you." "Who?" I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. "What are you talking about?" The shadows pulsed around her like living things, and my instincts screamed at me to leave. But before she could respond, the shadows coalesced, contorting into grotesque shapes. A low growl vibrated through the air, shaking the very ground beneath me. I could feel the room, the auditorium itself, tremble with an unseen power. Something was closing in. The girl's expression flickered between fear and resolve. "You have to go. Now," she urged, raising her hand as if to hold back whatever was coming. "They only want me, but you are in danger." With those words, the shadows lunged. I didn't think. I turned and sprinted toward the door, but my path felt warped, twisting and turning as if the space around me was alive. The growls intensified, a chorus of low, rumbling threats that seemed to laugh at my panic. I reached for the handle, praying it wouldn't be stuck again. It opened easily this time, and I stumbled out into the hallway without looking back. My heart raced as I dashed down the corridor, the darkness chasing me, eager to reclaim what I had disturbed. I nearly collided with a figure blocking my way. It was Mark. His eyes widened in shock as I skidded to a stop. "What happened?" he asked, glancing back towards the auditorium, concern etched on his face. "The girl. The shadows." My words fell from my lips in a breathless rush, panic rising again. I couldn't force myself to say it all, how I felt so close to something unspeakable that I couldn't quite grasp. "Did you find her?" he pressed, urgency in his voice. "You shouldn't have gone in there alone." There was a different tone now, one that shot a chill right to my core. "I don't know, she warned me. Mark, we need to get out of here." The shadows loomed in my mind, taunting me with their unyielding grip on reality. With no alternative, I grabbed his arm. "You have to believe me. Let's go." Mark hesitated for a heartbeat, and in that moment I could feel the air shift behind me. Something dark lingered near the auditorium entrance. It was watching us. Before I could say anything else, a voice echoed through the corridor, dragging my attention back. "You can't escape." I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. There in the distance, the girl stood once more, suspended between two worlds. Her eyes locked on mine, pleading but fierce. "Help me." My breath caught in my throat, and I realized that deciding to leave just might be the hardest choice I'd ever have to make. The shadows seemed to pulse, their dark forms shifting and swirling like a living entity. I blinked, trying to shake off the fear threatening to consume me. Mark's grip on my arm was solid, a fleeting comfort in the chaos, but I could feel his uncertainty too. "We can't just stand here," I whispered, glancing back at the girl. "Who is she?" Mark's voice was barely above a hush. "And what did she mean by help?" "I don't know," I shot back, urgency creeping into my voice. "But we have to go now. We should find anyone else in the school." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the auditorium, cutting me off. It sounded like the entire wall buckled under the pressure of something massive. The noise reverberated through the hallway, sending a fresh wave of terror boiling up in my chest. "Did you hear that?" Mark asked, eyes wide. "Of course I heard it," I snapped, tugging him toward the emergency exit. My heart raced as I felt an electric tension in the air, almost as if something unseen was pulling us back, wanting us to stay. "Wait," Mark said suddenly, pulling me back. "What if we find out what happened? What if she's in trouble?" I hesitated. The girl's expression, full of desperation and fear, flickered in my mind. But the growls still echoed, gnawing at my resolve. The idea of finding out what was happening terrified me. "We can't help her if we're dead," I insisted. But then something caught my eye. Peeking through the small window of the auditorium door, I saw movement, dark forms shifting in the space. I squinted, trying to discern what they were. It wasn't just shadows now. They were taking shape, manifesting into monstrous figures. My breath quickened. "Mark, it's not safe." Then I heard it again, a haunting whisper from inside, echoing around us. "She needs you." The voice struck the fear deep within me, rooting me to the spot. Mark's fingers went still on my wrist. He seemed paralyzed by the words, just as I was. What if she can help us?" "No!" I shouted, the panic rushing back. I was fighting against myself now, against the urge to investigate, but knowing how precarious our situation was. "We need to leave." Before I could grasp his arm and pull him out of reach, he shook my hand off and moved toward the door. "Just a look, that's all. If she's in trouble, we can't just abandon her." My pulse pounded in my ears as I watched him inch closer. "Mark, don't," I cried, but it was too late. He opened the door and the growls erupted into a furious cacophony. "Mark!" I screamed, grabbing the edge of the door as he stepped inside. Everything happened in a blur. The forms surged forward, and I could see their eyes gleaming with malice. Then, in a flash, the auditorium door slammed shut behind him, leaving me out in the dark hallway, breathless and terrified. "Mark!" I shouted, pounding on the door. My heart raced with fear. "Mark, answer me!" There was only silence, and in that silence I could hear the whispers creeping around me, echoing from the shadows that were now closing in on me. I knew I was running out of time. I stepped back, my hands trembling as I banged on the door again. The only reply was the growling, now echoing like a terrible symphony behind that barrier. "Mark, please," I pleaded, desperation clawing at my throat. The whispers were louder now, circling me like vultures, promising dread. I turned away from the door, my instincts screaming at me to escape. But where would I go? The hallway felt alive, closing in around me. I followed the shadows, heart pounding with every step. I needed to find help. Then, from my right, I caught a flicker of movement. My breath hitched in my throat. A figure lurked just at the edge of visibility, half hidden in the darkened corridor. "Hello," I called, my voice shaky. "Is anyone there?" The figure stepped into the faint light. A boy from my class named Sam. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder as if expecting something terrible to emerge from the dark. "It's not safe." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Mark just went in there. We have to help him." "No," Sam shouted, his tone sharp. "You don't understand. Whatever's in there, it's not just the girl. It wants something. You can't go in. No one knows what it can do." My mind raced. "The girl, I saw her. She's in trouble." "I saw her too," Sam replied, his voice dropping. "But she's part of it now. Trust me, whatever she meant, it's too late." The fear in his eyes sent another chill through me. "We can't just leave him," I insisted. A low rumble filled the air, making the walls shudder. The floor beneath my feet vibrated, and I felt the temperature drop. I glanced back at the auditorium door, panic bubbling inside me. I couldn't lose Mark. Not like this. "Then what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sam's gaze darted around us, wide and frantic. "We have to find another way out," he urged. "There's an exit in the art wing. If we can get to it, we might—" The growls erupted harder now, drowning Sam's voice. I turned back to the auditorium door, fearing what I would see. But when I looked, I was met by something far worse. A shadow detached itself from the mass within and stretched toward me, fingers curling like twisted branches. Before I could comprehend what was happening, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed everything and I froze, my heart hammering. "Sam," I called, but a hand closed over my mouth, pulling me into the wall of shadows. I struggled, kicks and frantic movements getting me nowhere. Then I felt a rush of air, and suddenly I was in the auditorium, surrounded by darkness and those monstrous shapes. I could barely breathe, panic swelling as I realized I was not alone. Then I remembered Mark. I had to find him. That was when I noticed something on the floor, faintly glowing trails leading deeper into the chaos. Whatever was happening, the light pulsed like a heartbeat, and I felt an odd pull toward it. I took a step forward, drawn in despite every instinct screaming at me to flee. I needed answers. I needed to find Mark. But then I heard that whisper again, echoing off the walls. "She needs you." A sudden crash echoed from behind me, forcing me back into the suffocating shadows. I turned, fear coiling tightly in my chest. I wasn't alone anymore, and whatever was about to happen next wouldn't leave me unscathed. The moment I turned around, I was met by a mass that writhed and twisted in the darkness. It blocked the glow of the trails, making it impossible to see what was lurking behind it. My breath quickened. I could hear light snickering, like it was laughing at my fear. "Mark!" I shouted, my voice nearly drowned out by the cacophony of growls. I took a cautious step back, ready to bolt, but the mass moved closer, its outline shifting. It felt like something was watching me from the shadows, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Another whisper floated through the air, softer this time. "Find her." It echoed, sending a chill down my spine. Something about that voice felt familiar, and I couldn't shake the feeling it wanted me to follow the glowing trail. "Sam?" I called out again, hoping to find a shred of comfort in his presence, but I received no answer. Instead, the darkness shifted and a pair of glowing eyes emerged. They were filled with an intense hunger that sent my heart racing. I felt rooted to the spot, the urge to run battling with the need to stay closer to the glow. What if Mark was nearby? What if he needed me? But deep down, I sensed that whatever this was, it might be more dangerous than I could handle. The eyes blinked, and then everything switched. An image invaded my mind, a girl standing in a field, arms outstretched, and the same sneer on her face that I'd seen before. Then came an explosion of laughter, sharp and biting. I gasped as the girl's features morphed, twisting into something grotesque. I stumbled back, the trail flickering. I hated this feeling, this inability to trust what I was seeing or hearing. Was it all in my head? I suddenly felt alone, the shadows closing in, their whispers mingling with my own thoughts. "You shouldn't have come here." I clenched my fists, gathering my courage. "Mark!" I yelled one last time, pushing past the fear that racked my body. I had to fight against this. I had to find him. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Sam, rushing toward me, his face twisted in panic. "We need to go!" he shouted over the growls, lunging for my arm. Before I could react, the mass shifted again. A distorted hand broke free, grasping at Sam's ankle. He fell, and I turned, adrenaline surging. There was no way it would take him too, not when Mark was still in danger. "Grab my hand," I yelled, reaching out. With a heavy heart, I felt the bond we shared, but for the moment it seemed we were both lost in the shadows. As he scrambled toward me, the weight of dread settled in the air. "It won't let us leave," Sam shouted, panic clear in his voice. Sam's grip slipped as a blare of light split through the darkness, illuminating the chaos around us. I stood frozen as the light revealed another shadowy figure emerging from the chaos, one that chilled me to the bone. I couldn't breathe. That's when I saw her, the girl, staring right at me with those hollow eyes. My skin crawled as she grinned, an invitation mixed with malice. I knew then that whatever power she wielded was not something I could face alone. "Run!" Sam yelled, pulling at me desperately. But my feet felt glued to the floor. The girl's gaze remained fixed on me, and I could feel whatever darkness was behind it pulling me in. Panic surged as the shadows loomed closer, and at that moment I understood just how deeply entwined all our fates had become. In the eye of the storm, time froze, and I had to make a choice. I broke free from my paralysis just in time. The shadows crept toward us, eager to drag us down into their abyss. I grabbed Sam's hand, adrenaline fueling my movement. "We can't stay here," I shouted, yanking him up. We stumbled together, sprinting away from the glaring eyes that still bore into me. We dashed past the remnants of glowing trails, but they flickered as if they were dimming. The shift in light felt like a heartbeat, erratic and scared. I could hear Sam's breath echoing in my ears, a reminder that we were not alone in this. But the mass of shadows didn't just loom behind us. It seemed to pull at the corners of my mind, begging for me to turn back. "Where do we go?" I gasped, desperately looking for any hint of an escape. My heart raced and I couldn't believe we were still alive. All I could see were trees stretching tall above us, branches reaching out like fingers. "Anywhere but here," Sam replied, his voice tense. Then abruptly he stopped. "This way." He led me toward a narrow path that diverged into the woods. The trees seemed to swallow the light we had chased just moments before, but the ground beneath felt firm and reassuring. "What about Mark?" I asked, but my voice wavered. The worry clawed at my chest. "He'll have to find his own way. We need to focus on surviving." His urgency pushed me forward, even though every instinct screamed to go back and find him. As we weaved through the underbrush, the whispers of the shadows followed us, echoing through the trees. "You shouldn't have come here," they seemed to chant, a haunting melody that wrapped around my thoughts as tightly as a noose. Were they warnings or threats? I couldn't tell. Then a branch cracked nearby. My heart lurched again and I stopped dead in my tracks. "What was that?" I whispered. "I don't know," Sam murmured, his grip on my hand tightening. We peered into the darkness, the trees forming eerie shapes. Silence settled, making the tension feel unbearable. Footsteps crunched in the leaves, closing in on us. "Stay close," I said, panic rising. We crouched behind a massive oak, our hearts pounding in sync. The sound of those footsteps grew louder. My brain raced through possibilities, and then it hit me. What if it wasn't just the girl who was hunting us? What if there were others? I turned to Sam, fear evident in my eyes. What if she's not alone? He opened his mouth to respond, but all sound was swallowed as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was another child, or at least they had the form of one. But their eyes glowed with the same emptiness I had seen before. The ghastly grin returned, wide and uninviting. "Hiding, are we?" the creature said, its voice dripping with mockery that made my skin prick. "You know you can't run forever." I felt my heart sink. I would never have expected this. A boy? Was it even a boy? Something about his presence sent a wave of cold fear washing over me. It was as though he was feeding off our terror. With an instinct I couldn't explain, I pulled Sam closer. "We can't let it get to us. We have to fight or run." Just as I spoke, the shadows behind the figure stirred, and one of its hands reached out toward us. We sprang into action, hearts racing anew, adrenaline launching us away from the trees, away from the nightmare threatening to close in on all sides. Then everything went dark. The ground fell away, and I felt myself being engulfed by the void. My mind raced with one thought. Where was Mark? I gasped as the darkness swallowed me whole, a chilling void that felt alive and oppressive. I couldn't see or hear anything, but the sense of falling made my stomach drop. Just when I thought I'd never feel solid ground again, I landed hard on something cold and unforgiving. I blinked a few times, trying to make sense of my surroundings. Dim light filtered in from a broken ceiling above, revealing a room filled with crumbling walls and scattered debris. I pushed myself up, heart still racing. Sam lay a few feet away, blinking as he pulled himself into a sitting position. "Where are we?" he whispered, clearly shaken. "I don't know," I admitted, scanning the room for any threatening shadows. "It looks like some kind of old building." The space felt abandoned, but I could sense the weight of something unseen pressing in around us. I stood up and took a cautious step toward the nearest wall, feeling its rough texture under my fingertips. Then I heard it, a low hum, almost like a voice murmuring, but I couldn't make out the words. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. Sam nodded slowly, his face pale. "It's creepy. It almost sounds like chanting." My stomach twisted. "Chanting? From where?" "I don't know. It seems to be coming from around the corner," Sam said, glancing towards a shadowy doorway leading deeper into the building. "Should we check it out?" I hesitated, fear prickling my skin. The idea of following a sound into the dark felt like a death sentence. Before I could argue with myself, Sam pushed forward. "We've got to find a way out of here." With that, we crept toward the doorway, the hum growing louder and more distinct. It thrummed in my bones, and I could feel an energy thick in the air. As we reached the opening, I peered around the corner, half expecting to see something horrific. Instead, the sight took my breath away. A dimly lit room lay before us, packed with strange symbols painted in what looked like dried blood. Shadows flickered, shifting on the walls as if they were alive. And in the center, a crude altar stood, draped in dark cloth. "Is that a—" Sam trailed off, disbelief coating his words. "An altar," I finished, dread clawing at my throat. "What are they doing here?" Then I noticed the figures. Dark shapes gathered around the altar, their heads bowed. I felt a shiver race down my spine. Each figure had the same empty gaze we'd seen in the boy. They chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like an eerie song. "We have to go now," I said, my heart pounding. I grabbed Sam's wrist, pulling him back the way we came. We rushed through the dim light, silence hanging heavy behind us like a curtain. "Wait!" Sam whispered suddenly, halting in his tracks. "What if Mark is here? What if he needs us?" I turned to him, fear battling my logic. "We don't even know what's in there. We can't risk it." Just then, another figure emerged from the shadows, blocking our escape. This one was taller, its features more defined. It grinned, a wide, unsettling smile that chilled me to the bone. "Leaving so soon?" it said, its voice smooth and sinister. "You're just in time for the ceremony." My pulse quickened. The chanting in the distance had changed, morphing into a rhythmic beat, pulling at something deep inside me. I felt the shadows shimmer, reaching out like tendrils in the darkness, and I realized we were not just trapped here. We were part of something much larger, something that thrived on fear. "Run!" I screamed, shoving Sam past the figure. But as we fled, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running towards something we couldn't escape. Just as we reached the doorway, I turned back for one last look. That's when I saw it, a glint of something metallic on the altar. A knife? And then the chanting stopped. A chilling silence fell, and I wondered if we had made the worst decision of our lives. Stumbling into the flickering light, I felt Sam's grip tighten on my arm as we rushed down the dark corridor. The whispers of the shadows lingered behind us, taunting, growing louder, hungry for our fear. "What now?" Sam gasped, panting hard as we turned a corner. "We need an exit," I replied, frantically scanning our surroundings for a door or a window. Everything felt like it was closing in. shadows reaching from the corners of the hallway, promising chaos and despair. My heart pounded in my chest, driven by the memory of the altar and the figures that whispered of ancient intentions. Just then, a door creaked open further down the hall, a slice of light cutting through the dark. "There," I pointed, and together we rushed toward it. As we reached the door, I threw it open, instinctively stepping in front of Sam to shield him. Inside, bright sunlight poured through grimy windows. We had entered an old storage room filled with unused desks and forgotten supplies. My eyes scanned for a way out. A window, perhaps. "Can we get through these?" Sam asked, rushing to a nearby window that appeared weakly sealed, but hastily shoved it open. "Hold on," I said, helping him push the window up. Sunlight poured in, illuminating the faces of lost memories smeared in dust. We could almost taste the freedom outside, but a low growl rumbled nearby, freezing us in place. Panic gripped me as I turned back toward the door. A dark figure loomed there, its outline twisted and familiar. The same shadows that had haunted us through the school. "It's here," I whispered, backing away. "Quick! We have to jump!" Sam insisted, climbing half out the window. I followed, adrenaline rushing as the creature's presence pressed down like a weight in the air. I barely made it through before the howling whispers escalated, and I felt a cold grip on my ankle, one of the shadowy figures. With a surge of strength, I yanked myself free, tumbling onto the grass below. Sam landed next to me, and we wasted no time scrambling to our feet. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline igniting our limbs. We raced into the bright daylight, sprinting across the schoolyard, indifferent to the stunned expressions of passing students. My breath came in rapid bursts as I glanced back. The shadows didn't follow us out of the building, and for a moment I felt a flicker of relief. But deep in my gut, dread coiled. What had we left behind? What fate awaited Mark? Suddenly Sam stopped. "We can't just leave him. He might still be in there." "Now?" I looked back at the school. The auditorium towered ominously, a beacon of all our horrors. "What if we find him and it's too late?" "We can't abandon him," Sam insisted, uncertainty wrinkling his brow. "We saw the girl. We have to help him." A distant growl resonated in response, cutting through our argument. Time hung heavy in the air, and I felt the weight of an unworthy decision pressing down. "Fine," I said reluctantly, "but we need to be quick. We've already seen the horrors in there." With a quick nod, we rushed toward the entrance again, re-entering the school with our hearts racing. Memories of the whispered urgencies echoed as we made our way back into the familiar yet foreign hallways of the building. As we neared the auditorium, I hesitated, hearing a haunting refrain rising through the air. The chanting had returned, an eerie chorus that filled the rooms. What kind of power stirred there? Injustice wrapped in shadows. The door flung open before us, as if inviting us back into the folds of darkness. Through that threshold, I could see fleeting shapes sputtering in soft lights, the shadows growing restless. Were we still too late to save Mark? "Where are you?" I called, voice shaking, and it echoed into the abyss. Strained silence followed, but then a soft voice pierced through the growing chaos. "Help me!" "Mark!" I shouted, searching the horizon for his familiar face. "I'm coming!" We pushed further inside, the chanting crescendoing. The air tightened around us, the shadows swirling, and the ground quaked under the weight of unseen forces. The girl appeared again, standing at the foot of the stage, still dressed in that tattered costume. "You shouldn't have come back," she warned, her voice mournful but stern, entwined with dread. "Where is he?" I cried. "We need to find him." Just then, Mark stumbled from behind one of the heavy curtains, hair disheveled, face pale as a ghost. Relief washed over me, but before I could call out, a rumble echoed from behind me. The shadows thickened, swirling tighter, an angry mass gathering momentum. "Run!" I cried again, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought we had outpaced the shadows, only for them to lunge forward, pulling at our heels. As we raced toward the exit, I glanced back at the girl, the sorrow reflected in her hollow eyes, but they shifted, focusing on Mark. "No, don't go back," she warned, pointing toward the shadows, but her voice was lost in the pandemonium. Finally reaching the door, we kicked it open, spilling into the daylight that felt like a miracle after the suffocating darkness. "Go," I yelled, and on instinct, we bolted across the yard, sprinting until the school was a distant figure behind us. We paused, panting, heartbeats pounding in tandem with the weight of what had happened. I looked back, and the school stood silently, the shadows retreating behind its walls, the ambient whispers fading into nothingness. "That was too close," Sam said, breathing heavily. "What about the girl?" Mark asked, still in shock, but I couldn't face the thought. "I don't know," I murmured. "But we made it out. That's what matters." Yet even as I spoke, I felt a shiver creep down my spine. None of us truly understood what we had faced, what had been left behind. The darkness lingered, questions unanswered echoing into the distance, about the girl, about the shadows, about the truth hidden beneath the old school's bricks. And as we drove away, I couldn't help but glance back. The building still stood, ancient and unknowable, a haunted relic filled with stories waiting to be told. I wondered, would we ever really escape its grip?